Almost a week has passed and still no sign of Michelle Lay, a 26-year-old California nurse who seems to have vanished after going to her car at a hospital.
On a warm May evening in the San Francisco Bay Area, a promising young nursing student walked into a hospital parking garage and never walked out alive. What seemed at first like a routine disappearance would unravel into a chilling story of obsession, jealousy, and a friendship twisted into something deadly. This is the story of Michelle Lay, whose only crime was being kind to the wrong person.
Here we are in Santa Barbara Beach. We're having lots of fun, and here's my brother.
Michelle Hoang Thi Lay was 26 years old in the spring of 2011. She had spent her entire life working toward a single dream, one that had been shaped by tragedy and love in equal measure. Michelle grew up in San Diego, raised in a Vietnamese-American family that valued education, hard work, and compassion above all else. Her mother had been a nurse practitioner, a woman who dedicated her life to caring for others. When Michelle's mother passed away from cancer while Michelle was still a teenager, the loss was devastating. But it also solidified something deep within Michelle. She would finish what her mother started. She would become a nurse, not just to honor her memory, but to carry forward that same spirit of healing. By May of 2011, Michelle was just 6 months away from graduating from Samuel Merritt University in Oakland. She was completing her clinical rotations at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Hayward, working in the maternity ward. Friends and family described her as radiant, selfless, and endlessly optimistic. She was the kind of person who stepped up when others stepped back. After her mother's death, Michelle had become a maternal figure to her younger brother Michael and her cousins. She taught them to drive, to cook, and to navigate life's challenges with grace. She was beloved by everyone who knew her, a young woman on the verge of achieving everything she had worked so hard for. But there was someone in Michelle's life who did not see her this way. Someone who had once called Michelle her best friend, but who now saw her as a threat, a rival, an enemy who needed to be eliminated. That person's name was Giselle Esteban. Michelle Lay and Giselle Esteban had known each other since high school in San Diego. In those early years, they were inseparable. They shared dreams, secrets, and plans for the future. When both young women decided to move north to the Bay Area for college, they did so together. Michelle enrolled at Samuel Merritt University to pursue her nursing degree, while Giselle attended San Francisco State University. For a time, their friendship seemed unshakable. But friendships, like all relationships, can be fragile, and sometimes they can curdle into something unrecognizable. The trouble began when both women became connected to a man named Scott Marasigan. In the spring of 2003, Michelle and Scott went on a few dates. It was brief, casual, and ended amicably. There was no romance, no intimacy, just two people realizing they were better off as friends. Michelle moved on. Scott moved on. And then, not long after, Giselle and Scott began dating. For most people, this would have been a non-issue. Michelle had no lingering feelings for Scott. She was happy for Giselle. She remained friendly with both of them, as many people do after brief, inconsequential romances. But for Giselle, the past was never past. Despite having no evidence, no reason, and no truth to support her belief, Giselle became convinced that Michelle and Scott were secretly involved. She believed they were betraying her, mocking her, plotting against her. No amount of reassurance from Scott, no amount of distance from Michelle could change her mind. Giselle and Scott's relationship was turbulent from the start. They broke up and got back together repeatedly over the years. In 2005, they had a daughter together. But even the birth of their child could not bring stability to the relationship. By late 2010, they had separated for good, with Scott eventually gaining full custody of their daughter. This custody battle only deepened Giselle's resentment. She blamed Michelle for everything that had gone wrong in her life, even though Michelle had done nothing but try to live her own life in peace. By early 2011, Giselle's fixation on Michelle had reached a dangerous level. She sent threatening text messages to both Scott and Michelle. Messages filled with rage, paranoia, and thinly veiled threats. In one message, she told Scott that Michelle had dug her own grave. In another, she warned that Michelle would not be an issue for much longer. Scott became so alarmed that he secretly recorded one of Giselle's tirades while they were driving together with their daughter in the back seat. In the recording, Giselle's voice is calm but chilling as she tells Scott that if he does not cut off contact with Michelle, she will take his life and Michelle's life, and he can take that to the grave.
I asked you, can we just be honest about Michelle, because she's the one issue that I really am having a hard time dealing with.
That's not what you said at all.
Yes! Okay,
We
well
didn't
then
talk for
fine.
days.
Starting from now, we are going to be honest about Michelle. Do you understand me?
Okay.
Whether you sleep with her, whether you share food with her, whether you talk to her, you will be honest with me. Look at me! You will be honest with me regarding her. Otherwise, I will take your life and hers. Mom. And you can take that to the grave with you.
Why?
Why? Because you lied about her so many times, it's hard to believe that you didn't sleep with her and knock her out. You deserve to die for your lies, as does she, and you will. If you do it again, this is your last and final warning.
Why?
Do you understand me? It's your last and final warning.
Scott eventually obtained a restraining order against Giselle, barring her from coming within 100 feet of him or his family. The order was issued just 3 days before Michelle disappeared. Friday, May 27th, 2011, was supposed to be an ordinary day. Michelle was completing her final shift at Kaiser Permanente before a well-deserved break. She had plans to visit friends in Reno over the weekend. The end of the semester was approaching, and she was excited about the future. Everything she had worked for was finally within reach. At 6:55 that evening, Michelle told her supervisor she needed to grab something from her car. It would only take a moment. She walked out of the maternity ward and headed toward the parking garage. Security footage captured her walking calmly through the third-floor parking area, pausing briefly near her white Honda SUV, then changing direction. She stood still for a moment, as if considering something, then moved again. 17 minutes later, her car sped out of the garage at high speed. Back inside the hospital, Michelle's shift was ending. Her supervisor wanted to gather all the students together for a final debrief, but Michelle was nowhere to be found. Her purse, her coat, and her personal belongings were still in the staff locker room. She had not signed out. Her phone was ringing endlessly, but no one was answering. Concerned, her instructor grabbed a security guard and went out to the parking garage. Michelle's usual parking spot was empty. A few minutes later, Michelle's car screeched back into the garage, racing up to the third floor. The instructor began waving, relieved to see the vehicle return. But the car stopped only briefly before reversing at high speed, driving past them and exiting the building again. The instructor was not convinced that Michelle had been driving the car. Something was terribly wrong. She called the police immediately. By the next morning, Michelle had not returned. Her friends, her family, and her colleagues knew this was not like her. She was responsible, reliable, and caring. She would never disappear without a word. 15 of her friends showed up at the police station, demanding that an investigation begin immediately. Officers went to the hospital parking garage and found blood on the ground where Michelle's car had been parked. An hour later, police located Michelle's car. It was neatly parked in a visitor's spot outside an apartment building just half a mile from the hospital. The car was locked. Inside, investigators found Michelle's laptop and a strange piece of evidence, an identification card from Samuel Merritt University, belonging to a student Michelle did not know. The card had been reported stolen just days earlier. Detectives quickly ruled out the possibility of a random attack. This was someone who knew Michelle, someone who had planned this carefully. Hospital records revealed that 30 minutes after Michelle walked to her car, the emergency room received a phone call from someone claiming to be Michelle. The caller asked to be put through to Michelle's instructor, but she had called the wrong department. When the receptionist questioned her, the caller said that Michelle's father had suffered a heart attack and she was driving around to different hospitals trying to find him. She would not be returning to work. Investigators knew Michelle's father was in Vietnam. The call had been a ruse. Then, Michelle's phone came back to life. Her brother Michael received a text message, "I'm fine." Other messages followed, sent to dozens of Michelle's friends and family members. Each message told a different story. A flat tire, a trip to Reno, a need for a social media break, feeling sick and needing rest. When Michelle's ex-boyfriend, who was still a close friend, texted her phone, the response he received was chilling. "Who is this?" The messages stopped as suddenly as they had started. Investigators traced the phone's location through cell tower pings. The phone had traveled in a wide loop around Hayward before heading into a remote area of Alameda County, a rugged region filled with canyons and dense vegetation. Then the phone went silent. Detectives began interviewing people in Michelle's life, and one name kept coming up: Giselle Esteban. When they spoke to Giselle at her home, she was dismissive, almost contemptuous. She admitted she had been at the hospital that night for a prenatal checkup. She was 3 months pregnant at the time. When asked about her relationship with Michelle, Giselle did not hide her hatred.
We heard about Michelle. Michelle?
Oh God, what about her?
She went missing.
And have you guys tried calling her? I have no idea how to help you with that. I've actually been trying to look for her.
Since when?
Almost a week now, to tell her to stay away from my daughter.
And talking to her friends and such, we understand that you guys had a tumultuous relationship.
A tumultuous relationship? She was my best friend who slept with my then fiancé.
She called Michelle names, blamed her for ruining her life, and showed no concern for her former friend's disappearance. But Giselle's story began to unravel quickly. Scott Marisigan, Giselle's ex-boyfriend and the father of her daughter, came forward with disturbing evidence. He showed investigators text messages Giselle had sent, messages filled with threats and rage. He played them the recording he had made of Giselle threatening to take his life and Michelle's life. He told them about the restraining order he had just obtained against her. Security footage from Samuel Merritt University revealed something even more damning. The day before Michelle disappeared, Giselle had entered the campus posing as a prospective student. She wandered through the building, tried locked doors, and eventually stole a white lab coat and the identification card that would later be found in Michelle's car. She returned that evening, after most people had left, and spent over an hour searching through classrooms, looking at computers, and examining student schedules. She had been tracking Michelle's movements, learning her routine, preparing. Cell phone records showed that Giselle's phone and Michelle's phone had traveled together after Michelle disappeared. Surveillance footage from an Apple store showed Giselle bringing in an iPhone the next day, asking the technician to unlock it because her daughter had supposedly locked it by accident. The technician unlocked the phone, and Giselle left. Minutes later, she was seen in a nearby restaurant sending text messages. Those messages matched the ones Michelle's friends had received. Police placed a tracking device on Giselle's car, and watched as she made repeated trips past Scott's house, parking outside. Then Scott called police, with another discovery. He had found Michelle's phone hidden in the backseat of his own car. It appeared Giselle had planted it there, perhaps hoping to frame him, or simply to get rid of the evidence. On September 7th, 2011, police arrested Giselle Esteban and charged her with first-degree murder. They had no body, but the evidence was overwhelming. DNA analysis confirmed that Michelle's blood was on a pair of Giselle's shoes. A strand of hair found in Michelle's car matched Giselle's DNA. Her fingerprints were on the steering wheel. Searches of Giselle's computer revealed a disturbing pattern of research in the days before Michelle's murder. She had searched for how to induce a heart attack without leaving a trace, how to follow someone without being caught, how to break locks, and information on highly toxic gases like potassium chloride and carbon monoxide. After Michelle's disappearance, Giselle had searched Michelle's name over 300 times. 10 days after Giselle's arrest, a volunteer search team made a heartbreaking discovery. Michelle Lowe's remains were found in a shallow grave in a remote canyon between Pleasanton and Sunol, buried under vegetation in an area so secluded that it had taken months to locate. Her body had decomposed to the point that her cause of death could not be determined, but there was no doubt about who had put her there. Giselle Esteban's trial began in October of 2012. She pleaded not guilty, but her defense attorney took an unusual approach. The lawyer admitted that Giselle had killed Michelle, but argued it was voluntary manslaughter, not murder. She claimed Michelle had provoked Giselle, that the killing happened in the heat of passion. The prosecution saw it differently. They described Giselle as a sociopath who had planned Michelle's murder for months, who had stalked her, studied her schedule, and ambushed her in a parking garage. The evidence supported their version of events. After 4.5 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Giselle showed no emotion as the verdict was read. She sat motionless, staring straight ahead, just as she had throughout the trial. On December 10th, 2012, Giselle Esteban was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Judge John Rolofson, who presided over the case, said he had never seen a case with more condemning circumstantial evidence or a defendant with less remorse. He told Giselle that she might never be paroled if she continued to show no regret for what she had done. Even in her interview with a probation officer after the conviction, Giselle maintained that she was wrongly convicted and that Michelle had been involved with Scott, despite all evidence to the contrary. Michelle's family delivered victim impact statements that were raw with grief. Her brother Michael broke down as he spoke about the day Michelle's remains were found. He said that Giselle had taken an innocent life because of an overactive imagination, that Michelle had done absolutely nothing wrong. Her cousin Christine described Michelle as joyful, carefree, and beautiful inside and out. She said that by committing the crime, Giselle had only revealed her own ugliness and Michelle's beauty. Michelle's father, Sun Le, who had flown from Vietnam to search for his daughter, said he knew Michelle was finally at peace, knowing her killer was behind bars. He also expressed a deep regret. He said he had always been so proud of how hard Michelle worked, how busy her life was, that he had never asked her to spend a single Father's Day with him. He wished he could turn back time and ask her for just one. Giselle gave birth to a second child while in prison. The identity of the father has never been publicly disclosed, though Scott Marasigan confirmed he was not the father. The child went into the custody of the biological father. As of today, Giselle Esteban remains incarcerated in California. She will be eligible for parole in 2037, exactly 25 years after her sentencing. Michelle's family has vowed to attend every parole hearing to ensure she is never released. They have written letters to future parole boards, asking them to remember Michelle's name, her face, and the senseless violence that ended her life. Michelle Lee's story is a reminder of how quickly love can turn to hate when it is rooted in delusion rather than reality. Giselle Esteban convinced herself of a narrative that had no basis in truth, and she allowed that narrative to consume her until it led to murder. Michelle did nothing to deserve what happened to her. She was simply living her life, pursuing her dreams, and trying to honor her mother's memory.